Yeah, let me play the mridanga. Can you play the kartals? Sure. Ooh. Yeah, that's usually the etiquette, I think. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribara Dhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribara Dhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Vallabha Girivara Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Ashto Tarasati Śrīmad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Kvantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. What's the verse? 48. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter number 6, The Downfall of Saubhari Muni. Text number 48. Evam griheshvabhirato Vishayan vividhai sukai Sevamano nachatushyad Ajyastokair ivanalaha Evam griheshvabhirato Vishayan vividhai sukai Sevamano nachatushyad Ajyastokair ivanala Evam griheshvabhirato Vishayam vividhai sukai Sevamana chatushyam Ladies. Evam, in this way, griheshu, in household affairs, abhirataha, being always engaged, vishayan, material paraphernalia, vividhai, with varieties of sukai, happiness, sevamana, enjoying, na, not cha, also atusyat, satisfied him, ajyastokai, by drops of fat, iva, like anala, a fire. In this way, Saubhari Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the material world. But he was not at all satisfied. Just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of fat. Purport: material desire is just like a blazing fire. If a fire is continually supplied with drops of fat, the fire will increase more and never be extinguished. Therefore, the policy of trying to satisfy material desires by catering to one's material demands will never be successful. In modern civilization, everyone is engaged in economic development, which is another way of constantly dropping fat into the material fire. The Western countries have reached the summit of material civilization, but people are still dissatisfied. Real satisfaction is Krishna consciousness. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, text 29, where Krishna says, Bhaktaram jagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam savabhutanam gyatva shantim richati. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. One must therefore, excuse me, one must therefore take to Krishna consciousness and advance in Krishna consciousness by properly following the regulated principles. Then one can attain an eternal blissful life in peace and knowledge. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupakada Mahiyam Dadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. Okay. So, what was Saubhari Muni's dilemma? What was Saubhari Muni's dilemma? Krishna Das. Yeah. Then what? This is beyond that point. Yeah. Despite what? Despite all? Well, look, it could be said here that his desires were all fulfilled. Right? Saubhari Muni has achieved the pinnacle of human achievement, right? He's got it all. 50 beautiful wives. Right? So, as much sense gratification as he can possibly enjoy. But there's one problem. And what's the problem? What's the problem? Anybody got an idea? What is his problem? It's in the translation. Is it up on the board? Chandrika? He's not happy. He's not happy. And so this is pretty much the emblem or the archetypical situation of material existence, especially, Prabhupada says, in the Western civilizations. We have material opulence, right? We're living in one of the most livable cities of the world. Yet, are we happy? No. Some happiness, temporary, but there's always that pinprick of material existence which is denoted by some problem, some issue. Arjun, Shaka and Sri Yasoda and I went to some courses a couple of weeks ago, a course, and it was about developing resilient communities. Right? Resilient communities. And resilient communities in the context of climate change. And being ready to react or respond to disasters that are precipitated by climate change. But it's very interesting how they analysed the human state, right? And so they have two, many things to consider, but two things especially to consider within a community. And that is the acute shocks, right? We all have acute shocks from time to time. And then the ongoing stresses, ongoing stress of, the day-to-day stress of material existence. Are you familiar with the day-to-day stresses of material existence? What are they? What are some of the day-to-day distresses of existence?
Finances.
Money. Very good. Yep, that's the top one. What else? Sibya, what's a distress that you have to manage? Huh? Day-to-day stresses. What can? Homework. Yes, homework. That's always a constant stress. Yep. What about little things like hunger? Huh? Huh? Will I get enough to eat? Usually not a problem. But we worry about it, right? What about for mums and dads, getting enough sleep? Huh? Huh? Hands up if you're getting enough sleep. Please raise your hands. Nobody at the Hare Krishna temple is getting enough sleep. That's funny, isn't it? That's because we like to wake up early. But then discover around about 11 o'clock, we start to nod, right? We start to fade. But there are acute stresses. So there's the day-to-day stress, and then acute stresses, which can be all manner of things. I remember 1997, I think it was, there was an explosion at the Longford gas plant, and Melbourne was without gas for 3 weeks. Were any of you living here at that time? Well, good luck to you. But we had to have a cold shower every day for 3 weeks. Oof. It reminded me of the Brahmacharya ashram in 1978. So occasionally we get acute, there are acute shocks that make us more keenly aware of the miseries that come from material existence. Even though we have so many facilities, we have really a very nice facility broadly within which we live. So very interesting. Saubhari Muni is a very powerful mystic yogi, enough so that he was pretty much able to satisfy his material desires. Right, when you think about it, he was such a powerful yogi that he was able to transform himself into a handsome young man, right? So much so that all of the daughters of Mandata, right? Mandata, Maharaj, I guess he's a Maharaj, because he's the controller of the planet, if not the universe. Planet, wasn't it? Mandata. He could transform himself into such a handsome young man that all of Mandata's daughters wanted to marry him. Right? So, as a result of the performance of his mystic yoga, he was almost able to do anything. That's why I wanted to be, when I was 16, I wanted to be a yogi. Right? I thought, yep, I can walk on water, right, which is a big thing, right? I can control others, I can manipulate. Because that was just a dream in my head. I never ever approached such a thing. But Saubhari Muni had these potencies, had these powers invested in him because of his mystic yoga practice. But despite the fact that he could manipulate the material energy in a way that would satisfy him from that sensual and even emotional perspective, right? It's described here that he couldn't satisfy his material desires. He couldn't be happy. Well, he was actually able to satisfy his desires, but still he wasn't happy. Right? That's the point. Evam griheshu abhirato. Always engaged in household affairs. Hands up hands up those here who are householders. Please raise your hands. Are you always busy? No response. What does that mean? Ooh? Yes, of course you are. Well, Vishayan Vividhai sukai, right? Which means engaged with the material paraphernalia, with the material energy for sense gratification, right? Sukai, happiness. Huh? But here, na tushyad. And tushya, right, tushyanti, right, means satisfaction. Right, we have, what is it? Matchita, matkata, prana, bodhayanta, parasparam, katayantascha, mamnicham, tushyanti cha, ramanti cha. Right, so tushti is satisfaction. But here, what is it? Na tushyanti, right? Na tushti. Despite having all of the facilities for material sense gratification, 50 wives, and we can assume that they all did exactly what he asked them to do, right? Well, we could assume that. Probably. My father had a saying, anything for a quiet life, right? That meant that he did what Mum told him to do. So anyway, was he enjoying? No, he wasn't. Or certainly he was enjoying, but he wasn't satisfied. This is an interesting nature of material existence, is we may have material enjoyment if we're very, very pious or very, very powerful, like Saubhari Muni, very powerful mystic yogi. Yet, despite the fact that he could enjoy material sense gratification to his full satisfaction, he wasn't happy. And the example is given, his material desires were actually the cause of his unhappiness, because the more he tried to satisfy his material desires, the less happy he became. And so the example, what's the example given here? Hands up if you think you know what the example is. Chandrika. Drops of fat on the fire. Yes. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna compares desire or calm to the burning of fire. Right? Lust is like fire. And so the desires, each of the desires that were experienced by Saubhari Muni were like drops of fat on the fire. And so the fire just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Right? So and this is, I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but we have desires, we try to fulfill them, and then what happens? We become happy, right? I got what I wanted. But then what happened? Was I satisfied? I used to think if I got the latest computer with the most powerful chip, my first PC had an 8088 Intel chip in it, right? Whoa. Better than whatever it was, 64K, whatever. So then it was, what was it, 8088, 80826, and on it went. I've now completely lost. I discovered that it doesn't matter what kind of a chip your computer has in it, it still has problems. Even you've got the latest software, you discover that one of the features that you liked and used all the time is now broken, right? So never, there's a certain amount of progress There's always, with progress, there's always a few steps backwards at the same time, right? So there's always that anticipation that if I satisfy my desires, I'll be happy, right? And to a degree, there's some degree of happiness, which Prabhupada says actually is the enemy. In the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says that happiness is an enemy of the soul, of the conditioned soul, right? Because we think, yes, it's there. But underlying all of this, especially for the devotees, right? Because a devotee is introspective. You know, modern marketing tells us, buy the latest this, that, or the other thing, and you'll be happy. And people keep getting drawn into that illusory concept of happiness and success. But those who are introspective, they understand this is not real happiness, this is not real satisfaction. Simply pursuing my material desires, and if I'm pious enough, being able to fulfill them, but then still suffering from the anxiety as identified in the resilience canopy work that we did. There's always going to be daily stressors and from time to time acute shocks, right? Acute shocks. And we can imagine what those acute shocks might be. So, this is the problem with material advancement, that one pursues one's material desires within the context or within the constraints of one's resources, and may achieve some satisfaction or some happiness, but that happiness is limited and temporary. What is it? Adyantavanta kuntaya nateshu ramate buddha. The wise don't take pleasure in those flickering transitional states of enjoyment, but rather, and Prabhupada says here, a devotee looks for real satisfaction in Krishna consciousness, right? And Prabhupada quotes the last verse of chapter 5 in the Bhagavad Gita. A devotee understands that if we work for Krishna's pleasure, Krishna is the sole proprietor. We are also proprietors. Right? What's that verse? Isavasyam, is that the right one? Isavasyam idam, gosh, I've forgotten. First verse of the Upanishad. Magrida kasyasviddanam, that's part of it, right? So, Krishna is the supreme controller, that, and we're also controllers. And Krishna does allow for us to, he gives us a quota. Okay, Krishna controls everything, but at the same time, he gives each one of us a certain quota of material facility and material sense gratification to enjoy. And a devotee recognizes that, yes, this facility has been provided for me to utilize, to engage with, to enjoy, but they do so in the context of understanding that ultimately everything belongs to Krishna. And Prabhupada gives the example of the bank teller, The bank teller has control of the money in his till, right? And the money that's given to him and the money that he or she hands out. But the bank teller has to always remember that the money belongs to Westpac or whatever the bank is. That's why, the tellers are always in anxiety at the end of the day to make sure that the books balance, right? Because if if their till doesn't balance and they've lost money, they'll have to pay it out. It'll come out of their pocket. So, a devotee is actually at a superior level of enjoyment, because there's a param drishtva, higher taste, in working and giving everything to Krishna. This is very difficult for materialistic people to understand, right? It's, what is it? Night time for the materialists. That devotees work, but they don't keep the results for themselves. They give them to Krishna. Right? The materialistic people, that's very difficult for them to understand. Why are you working? You're working so hard, but you don't keep anything for yourself. Or if you do keep something, it's just the bare minimum requirements. Right? So devotee is very happy, actually. Bhaktaram jagyatapasam savaloka maheshwaram suridam savabhutanam gyatva shantim richati. Shanti, right? Shanti is what? Om Shanti. Right? What's that? Peace. Peace. Yep. So devotee is actually peaceful because they control the mind and the senses in understanding who's the real proprietor. And okay, I'm a proprietor also, but I'm a subordinate proprietor. And I use everything, ideally, in Krishna's service. An interesting example of this, I've been talking to a couple of devotees. Actually, I talk to a lot of devotees, actually. Most of you, at least say good day to. But a couple of devotees I was talking to, and we're just talking about, one of the features that I find in our congregation is that usually the householders are 95 to 98%, I reckon, are double income families. Do you know what that means? What does a double income family mean? Huh? Loudly. Both partners are working. Kids are going, and how many children usually, do you think? Huh? Multiple. Is that what you said? 1 to 2. Yeah, that's right. Usually two's the average. Two, mum and dad are working, and 2 kids at school, or if they're grown up at uni. So very, very busy, right? Especially the mums. So occasionally I meet householders who it's only dad working, right? One of my friends I was talking to yesterday, and he told me that with the with the increase in interest rate, because and usually they've got a house with a mortgage plus an investment property or 2 or 3 or 4, right? This is the Hare Krishna community, the struggling Hare Krishna community in Melbourne. No, but actually on this point, they're working hard, and this devotee I was talking to, he was the breadwinner, right? And he said, when interest rates went up, he said, I was being strangled, right? Because now interest rates have gone down a little bit. Life is easier, right? But he said, not so many years ago, both he and his wife were working, right? But it was a struggle. He said, just so busy, so busy, so busy. No peacefulness, right? No peace. So a couple of years ago, they decided, well, they had the second child came along, so not much choice really. That he had to be the breadwinner. And he said, we're more peaceful now. Right? We're more peaceful now. And have more time to be Krishna conscious. Right? And with that Krishna consciousness, and he said, I've learnt to live with less. Right? I've learnt to live with less. And so learning to live with less means we can be happy. Right? Otherwise, if we're chasing this and that and the other thing to make us so-called happy. And here was Saubhari Muni, very interesting example. He's been chasing material happiness and is actually enjoying the sense gratification that comes with the power that he's acquired from his mystic yoga, but is missing the real purpose of life, which is to be happy. And so that's why the example of the desires being like drops of fat into the fire, right? And it just makes the fire burn more and more and more. So, he was not the only devotee that I've spoken to who said the same thing to me. They said, and I thought it was very satisfying. It was very, I felt very happy to hear from these two devotees, and they were saying, we're learning to live with less. Right? To be satisfied, in other words, be satisfied with what you've got. Which is interesting characteristic of a devotee, because a devotee is happy to engage their senses in the service of Krishna, their possessions, their time and effort in rendering service to Krishna, and from engaging in those activities, even though their material facility may not be expanding or increasing, their happiness and satisfaction is increasing. Right? Which is why we put so much emphasis on our spiritual practice and on devotional service, and devotional service free from, personal considerations as much as possible, or as much as is practical, because that satisfaction, and it's described here in the, Prabhupada's quoted this verse from the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when one understands that the real enjoyer is Krishna, that the purpose of performing sacrifices and austerities is for pleasing Krishna, he's the master and controller of everything. He's also our best friend, right? Our well-wisher, Suridam Sarvabhuteshu. So when we know that, and we're able to work primarily for Krishna's pleasure, and that doesn't mean that we miss out, right? We also get to experience more satisfaction. We get more satisfaction and pleasure from serving Krishna than we do just trying to fulfill our own desires. So very interesting. So Prabhupada says here, one must therefore take to Krishna consciousness and advance in Krishna consciousness by properly following the regulated principles. Then one can attain blissful life and be peaceful, right? There's a rather than ignite the fire, the devotee restrains the senses by following the regulated principles. There's still an active life, right? We can chant Hare Krishna, go on Sankirtan. We can distribute books. We can distribute prasadam. There's so many things we can do to engage our senses in Krishna's service that we're fully, there's not a minute to waste in doing these activities. There's plenty of challenges, and the resulting satisfaction and peace that comes from engaging in Krishna's service is fully enriching, fully satisfying. And devotee doesn't want anything else. Likes to engage in those austerities for Krishna's pleasure because they give us a higher level of satisfaction. This is difficult for the material. What is it? Ya nisha savabhutanam. Right? This is night for the most living entities. But it's a time of awakening for the devotee, for the transcendentalist. And we realize, hey, I can be happy without pursuing, what everybody else is pursuing. They think they're becoming happy, but what do we see in modern society? Everybody's miserable, right? And we're living a simple life, and we're able to be very happy and satisfied. So, Saubhari Muni is at a crisis point here, right? This is an acute shock, right? An acute shock for the materialist when he discovers, I can never be happy in the material world. Even I've got all material facilities, I can't be happy. So, in that kind of an environment, a devotee becomes introspective, looks within, realizing, happiness is not without, I need to look within. And that's what happens to Saubhari Muni in the next few verses. He becomes introspective and he contemplates why. Why am I suffering? Huh? Do you do that, Krishna does? No, didn't think you did. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? Any thoughts? You can speak. Oh.
So my question was that in this verse, when Saubhari Muni is enjoying self-gratification, is that like a mixed devotional service, or it is like because those times like
I think it was just sense gratification. Yeah, I don't. It's not immediately clear what kind of austerities he was performing, other than he was deeply engaged in austerity, right? And whether that was connected to devotional service or not, right? That's not clear. I think just pure sense gratification.
Thank you, Prabhu.
And you know, the interesting thing in Vedic culture, that there's always, because of Varnashram and because of the Yajna system, even the worship of the deity, it's all integral, or it's all part of what we understand to be Varnashram or Vedic culture, right? So within that construct, there's always, even at its remotest, a connection with Vishnu, right? And so there's that, even if remote, connection to Lord Vishnu, or at least to the demigods. And the demigods ultimately are serving the Lord. So that culture is, you know, broadly connected to Krishna, or remotely connected. So in that respect, you could say mixed devotional service, but that's a stretch, isn't it? Yeah. And Saubhari Muni, yeah. But yeah, in one sense, his capacity, his ability to perform austerities and penances was his downfall. He admits it later on. And eventually he becomes a devotee. This is kind of pop goes the Gita, right? In the Bhagavatam, one has to surrender, and that's the ultimate conclusion that Saubhari Muni came to. And he laments, my austerities and penances put me in a compromised position, and shall I give away the story or not? Or shall we wait for tomorrow? Wait for tomorrow, we'll find out why was he fallen? Despite being such a great yogi, why did he consider himself fallen? Very interesting. And of course, that's a characteristic of a devotee, is that they consider themselves always to be fallen. And so, topmost quality of a devotee is ekaika sharanam. Was it? I think that's it. In the 26 qualities of a devotee, the top quality is that they're always surrendered to Krishna. Ekaika Sharanam Vishnu, something like that. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Bhagavatam. Right? And then all of the other qualities will come, but especially one of the first qualities of a devotee is humility. Right? And Krishna is always teaching us, or in my experience is that Krishna is always teaching us how to be humble. Because very often we notionally make some progress, right? Then we start thinking, yeah, now I'm an advanced devotee. And then Krishna reveals, oh, I'm not as advanced as I thought I was. No, I'm not advanced at all. So, what is it? Submission, right? Comes. What are the 6 symptoms of surrender? Recommended by Rupa Goswami. Accepting that which is favourable, rejecting that which is unfavourable.
Believing that Krishna is protecting us at all times. Believing that Krishna is protecting.
Yes, protecting, and accepting his protection. Yes. And what is it? What's the last item?
Humility.
Humility, yeah. Humility. So, it's interesting. We'll read on to find out how Saubhari Muni came to devotional service. Despite the fact that he's a big yogi. You know, and that's pretty, you know, that's powerful. To convert yourself from old age into youthfulness. I have a few friends who'd love to have that. Myself as well, I could cash in on that. But it still didn't make him happy. That's very interesting. Even he got youthfulness and the ability, but he still wasn't happy. Okay, Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai.
Vindadalaya
Sarangam Kandat Ako Ikamaniya Visesha Shobha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Jami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Jami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam Adi
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Svam Sajivam Sadvaitam